Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar this afternoon, Managing Successful Change and Transformation in the Public Sector. Usual sort of Teams rules, please pop your mics on mute. There's quite a lot of us on the call, so please do sort of mute and then obviously unmute if you've got any questions. If you want to pop any questions in the chat throughout the call, then please do, or raise your hand, and obviously we'll pause and do that. Really do encourage you all to ask questions. Really interested to hear your experiences as well as we go through the presentation. Just going to hand over briefly to my colleague Aisling to introduce herself, and then I'll cover the sort of purpose of today's call.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Aisling Jalba, Client Services Director at Socratim Advisory. I've been with the company for about 2 and a bit years now, and my job is to design and deliver change programs. And Steve's going to talk about our organisation a little bit in a moment. So you'll see that we're predominantly working for the public sector. So designing and delivering change programs for the public sector is what we do. I've got a background in local government, in change, and in education and the third sector before that. So bringing all of that experience to Socratim. Steve?
Thanks, Aisling. And I'm Steve Twigg. I'm a principal consultant working primarily in the organisational design and change practice within Socratim Advisory. I'm a relative newbie to the organisation. I've been with Socratim for about 5 months now, but background in change and communication. So I spent a lot of time working on how we engage and how we communicate for large technical and organisational change programs as well. Spent a bit of time in the public sector, not actually work directly in the public sector, but work quite a lot for organisations that provide services and outsourcing services to the public sector, and bringing that now to bear on with a variety of clients at Socratim. In terms of the purpose for today, then hopefully the title of the webinar was self-explanatory, but I think today we're going to share with you our mindset model, which is our approach and our way of helping people through the change journey, I guess, and with the emphasis that there is a journey, I guess, as well. I think we all experience change throughout our lives, in our personal lives and our work lives, and I think we can all remember times when that's been a pleasant experience, and sometimes it hasn't been a pleasant experience. So understanding that change journey that people go on, and having a structure and understanding the mindsets that people go through in dealing with change and navigating change, I think is a key way to structure how you approach change within your organisations. So Aisling's going to cover the first couple of slides. Actually, I'm going to cover the next slide, which was just a little bit about our organisation, and then I'll hand over to Aisling. You may already be familiar with Socratim Advisory. Some of you may already be working with us. We're the consultancy arm of Socratim, which is a membership organisation of 2,500 people, really focused on innovation, technology, and modernisation within public services. We're 100 strong now as an organisation, working with around 100 public service and public sector clients as well, and starting to work outside of the sort of immediate public sector in areas like housing and energy now too, bringing some of that experience to bear. Core services for us are those 4 there, really around sort of program and project delivery, and sort of portfolio management, organisational design and change, and helping organisations to take people through that journey. Some of the technical skills around managing data and technology and architecture, and then the procurement side as well. So really the sort of full remit of a lot of that technical change and innovation within public service as well. So that's a little bit about us. Certainly happy to share more about us if you're not familiar with our organisation later in the call or after the call as well. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Aisling for the next couple of slides. Aisling's going to talk a bit around the sort of philosophy of change and how people deal with change, and then an introduction to our model and some of the early stages as well.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce the mindset model in a moment, which is our model for managing change, and it's based on a lot of theories that have gone before. So based on change theories that I'm sure you've heard of, It's based on psychology and neuroscience, but I think the core of it is a recognition that all change programs impact people, and therefore change isn't an exact science. So although we've got an approach we're going to share with you today, it can be adapted to change in all its forms, which is human and individual and impacts people differently. So we might like to think that change is linear, that it looks like this, but actually in reality, change is often messier. So our model that we're going to show you can support people at all stages of that change journey. So when we talk to our clients about managing change and we speak to leaders about managing change, we often use this model, which is William Bridges' transition model. And what this model tells us is that change and transition are two different things. So I often use an analogy to describe the difference between change and transition. And when we're talking about transition, we're talking about helping those individuals through their own transition journey. So I often explain that by using the analogy of moving house. You might have a family that's moving house. The change is the moving day, the day you give your old keys away and you get your new keys. That's the day you move house. But actually your transition spans that change, and it's longer and it's individual. So each member of that family might experience a different transition of that change. You'll be packing your things, reminiscing about where you used to live, thinking about the future, and really tracking that individual transition journey is really important to understand as leaders to help manage that change successfully and to bring your people through these different phases. So the ending, losing, letting go phase to the neutral zone to new beginnings. And successful change will bring people through that transition journey quicker, happier, more resilient. Bad change will mean people spend a long time in that red zone. So this is our mindset model. We've called it the mindset model because it's based on 6 mindsets. So what we explain is that for people to transition and have a successful change journey, our work as change professionals and for you as leaders is to design interventions that will support the development of these 6 mindsets in people. So the rest of the webinar today, we're going to go through these mindsets in a bit more detail, but this as an overview is saying that in order to manage change well, first of all, you need commitment from people, then consensus on the future direction, clarity on the journey ahead, confidence in being able to make that change, consistency in applying new practices, and creativity we really say needs to go throughout all of our planning and interventions. And we know from using this model with our clients that if we apply this successfully, your organisations are more adaptable and resilient to future changes. So it's never a kind of one and done approach, and that's why we've built it in a circle. Change is constant, and we'll all have to keep changing. By developing these mindsets, you'll also develop more resilient people and more adaptable people. So we're going to go through each of these in a bit more detail now. So our first mindset is commitment. And this is really an understanding that in order to begin any change journey, there needs to be commitment that you need to change. So this is a discovery stage. In terms of what we do or we advise in our interventions, this is where we would really understand current performance, identify any issues, what are the high level benefits, starting to build a case for change so you can grow that commitment in your people. Each of the slides that we're going to look at have this same format, and we've got a toolkit box at the bottom. These are just some examples of the sorts of activities that we would advise you do at each stage of a change journey in order to build the right mindset. So at this early stage, it's about developing your vision for change. It's about building a guiding coalition. And we've got more comprehensive toolkits that we deliver to our clients on this that will be all of the activities and interventions that you need to do at each stage to build commitment in your people. So we're just going to look at a quick quote of what commitment looks like, or what it could look like. So an example of something you might hear that shows actually there's commitment to change here. Our ways of working or systems are holding us back. Processes take too long. Oh, can't see. And data quality is poor. There must be another way. So this is an example of seeing commitment in action.
And I think that vision for change, Aisling, you mentioned that's something that really sort of creates a narrative, or starts to create a narrative that you start to develop, but can really then flow through the through the rest of the change journey as well. It really focuses people's minds, doesn't it, on the why and the sort of the direction as well. So starting to develop that and how you're going to socialize that helps to sort of build that commitment early on.
Yeah, and actually understanding early on. So Steve, your background in comms, often at that stage we might develop a logo or some branding, something that really paints a picture for people of the change that's going to happen. Okay, so our second mindset is consensus on future direction. Change will never be successful if people aren't pulling in the same direction. So creating consensus is a really, really important mindset. So consensus is a shared vision that communicates a clear direction of travel and a case for change to all stakeholders. So this is defining where you're going, the approach we're going to take to get there. It's about building belief that the future vision is achievable, it's the right time to change, and it's the right change. So this is really about bringing people together around a shared Northern Star that everyone's aiming in the same direction, all going to pull in the same direction and make the change happen. So in terms of our toolkit, the sorts of things that we might use at this point are things like what are the change priorities? What are the big things that we want to transform and get right? Socializing the vision for change, stakeholder mapping, some leadership coaching and development. Leaders are absolutely critical in any change program. So understanding and giving them the tools at the beginning so that they can lead from the front and be confident in the change that they're leading is really critical in building consensus. So a quote for what this might look like. I'm clear about what we're trying to achieve, and the chosen path is the best route for us. Creating consensus can be no easy feat in big organisations. So if you see things like this, that people are agreeing on what they need to change and what the route is, then you've built consensus. So our third mindset is clarity on the journey ahead. In order to make that change, stakeholders need to have a clear picture of what that change is going to look like, not just the end goal, but how they're going to get there. What are the impacts going to be? What's it going to look and feel like? So it's about preparing the organisation by ensuring we have a clear view of the steps involved. It's about painting that transformation roadmap, really understanding how we're going to get from A to B. So we've got our commitment, we've got our consensus. This is about how are we going to get there? So it's a definition of the change journey. There might be some requirements definition if it's a systems change, some high level change impact assessments, further work on benefits. So we always say benefits work, you start right from the beginning with high level benefits, and as you've got more clarity on your change program, you can start to build the detail behind that. We've got readiness assessments and methodologies around what do we measure in the organisation to see if it's ready for change, and then how can we track that over time? And then communications and engagement throughout any change program, absolutely critical. So what does a quote look like for clarity? I understand how the change will impact me and my team, what's happening between now and implementation, and my role in making it a success. So I'm going to hand over to Steve, so you don't have to listen to my voice for the whole time, and he's going to take you through the other three mindsets.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on change impact assessment as well. It was one of the tools that we mentioned in the previous one, and certainly I think Ashley, hopefully you agree, but I think that that's usually a light bulb moment for a lot of organisations when you really sort of start to identify what some of those changes are going to be and what the impacts are. And I'm thinking of that can often be a very detailed analysis that's very useful for a lot of people who are in the programme team, both from your organisation and the program team, but I think of ways that you can actually play that back in a high level or in a sort of big picture view to some of your key sponsors and stakeholders. I think is really important, and I think we've certainly seen a lot of programs that once you start sharing that, then that sort of clarity really does open some eyes in the organisation in terms of the sort of scale, I guess, of the change that's coming, and then people starting to think about the ways that they're gonna need to ready their business with our support to do that as well. So change impact assessment, a really key activity and key task in that prepare stage. So the stages we've been looking at so far have really been around discovery and defining and preparing people for the change as well. And once we get to the confidence mindset and building the confidence mindset, we're really into implementing the change as well. We need to make sure that the people who are impacted by that change understand that change, but also have confidence that they're being prepared in the right way for that change as well. So there's a lot of training involved in this area in terms of toolkit. We're analysing, we're understanding what those training and skill needs are. If there's a gap between the kind of as is and the to be process or adoption of technology, then understanding what that gap is and what that training need is, for example, or skills need is, delivering that training as well. And giving people the confidence that the support networks are in place, whether that's learning and development materials, accessibility to experts within your business, and overall there's a readiness, and we're building a readiness for change as well. So key tools there, as you can see, the learning and needs analysis and delivery is key. Leadership coaching again. Ashley mentioned already the importance of leaders and sort of senior sponsors in being really visible and vocal throughout the project. So again, ensuring that we have that continuous dialogue and they're visible throughout the change is vital. Starting to track some of the benefits that we've identified all the way back from our sort of discovery phase, where we started looking at some of the high level benefits are, through to actually having some a means of tracking those and measuring those going forward as well. And communication and engagement, of course, usually by this stage you're engaging with your end users and the people sort of directly impacted by the change. So that ongoing communication and engagement, ensuring that people are sort of fully aware of the change, of what's coming in terms of training and development, and that dialogue is two-way as well, I think is vital. As with previous slides, what does that look like in terms of what could that look like in terms of the mindset? Really, at this stage, you're looking for that affirmation that people feel they have the knowledge and skills to be able to adopt to that new way of working, and also that sort of sustainable aspect to it as well. That it's I have the skills to adopt the change, and it's a change that I feel is sustainable and a new way of working that I'm going to continue to adopt going forward as well.
Can I just add to that, Steve? So I think although each of our segments are the same size in here, actually the implement confidence phase might well be the longest. If you're thinking of maybe a technology implementation or something, that's going to be might be a long project. So sustaining those mindsets can be a challenge, and you may need to then come back and reiterate some of the earlier mindsets. So you might have lost some of your clarity because you've had turnover of staff. So it's about the sequencing, get the right word, of the mindsets and keep continuing to reinforce them through that sometimes long implementation.
Yeah. And I think measurement, I think in a couple of the toolkit bullets, we've mentioned readiness assessments, but there are ways and methodologies of tracking where your organisation is with with those mindsets as well. So understanding that obviously this is an individual journey for everyone, but encouraging that feedback and certainly measuring that readiness within your organisation ideally helps to identify maybe where there is some sort of slippage and some of those kind of issues that that Aisling mentioned in terms of that sort of sequencing too. So whilst we're building these mindsets in a linear way, then making sure that journey is ongoing and progressing, I think is key. So that measurement and encouraging the feedback, I think is vital. And then we move on to consistency. So again, I think as Aisling mentioned, sustainability and sustaining the change and embedding the change, I think, is vital. I think there's always the tendency once you get to this stage, or the risk of celebrating success too early and celebrating the success of the change too early. Really embedding the change and ensuring that it's that it's there for the long term, I think, is vital. Old habits do creep back in. Certainly when sort of program teams maybe are dismantled quite soon after the change as well. So understanding that there's a period after a change is implemented when that monitoring and that dialogue and that conversation still needs to be very much in people's minds, I think is key. So celebrating some of those quick wins, celebrating some of the success stories from the change, I think, is key, but keeping them going as well, rather than it just being a sort of day one, week one conversation, I think is vital. And then the ways that you're going to track and ensure that embedding, that might be readiness surveys, it might be some of the metrics and measurements that you put in place to kind of ensure those processes are fully embedded, but certainly ensuring that the mind and the eye is still on that change, I think, is key. And then that scale and refocus at sort of the top left hand corner of the circle as well, probably recognizing that the change is cyclical and is ongoing as well. So once you get to the end of the change, then how do we ensure that continuous improvement and realization of some of the benefits that you identified as well? A lot of those benefits won't actually come into play until if it's a technical change, for example, that technical change is implemented. So ensuring that ongoing continuous improvement, how we can continue to kind of take people on this change journey, how we can continue to embed, I think is vital. We haven't really mentioned change champions either in this deck yet, but certainly in the toolkit, then the Change Champion Network, something that happens on a lot of projects. Those are a network of change agents that you may have across your business that help you to understand individual parts of the business, help to cascade some of your messages, and help you to understand some of the impacts on sort of real people on the ground as well. So that Change Champion Network, ensuring that's up and running throughout the change, but also continues afterwards as well, is a good way of ensuring that on the ground some of those changes are fully embedded, and you have that sort of feedback loop if there are any hotspots where maybe that's not 100% the case at the moment. In terms of the mindset, what might that look like? A recognition, ideally, that leaders have been consistent in the support of the change. So again, sort of reinforcing that importance of leaders, walking the walk and talking the talk throughout the change as well. People feel that their new business as usual is a result of the change, and that early indication, as I said, a lot of benefits maybe are only just starting to become clear to people. But again, making sure that they are celebrated and they are highlighted in terms of some of the benefits that the changes has delivered, I think is key. And some of these mindsets, again, are things that you can capture. Ideally, you can capture during that sort of readiness assessment work and feedback that you're getting from everyone. And then the last stage of the mindset model is creativity, and you can see on the graphic on the right hand side that's really a circle that encapsulates the whole model, really. Encouraging creativity and looking for new solutions throughout the change journey, I think is key, as is encouraging people to always think of creative ways of providing the solution and giving everyone the opportunity to feed into it as well. I think I'm sure many of us have been on change, have experienced change in the past where we haven't felt we've had the opportunity to have a voice or share our ideas in that change, and that's always a frustration and a barrier, I guess, to adoption as well, and probably takes people longer in that sort of that transition model that Aisling shared earlier as well, to get from that sort of left-hand side to the more positive sort of adoption of the change as well. So certainly something that's key is that sort of two-way conversation. And then I guess it's also about creating that change mindset for future initiatives as well. I think by adopting this model and using some of the tools that we use to take people through these mindsets, then within an organisation we're building that culture of change and the ability to manage change better within the organisation. Change champion networks, for example, can work for other changes and for future continuous improvement, and building that sort of mindset of how change can successfully be managed and implemented, I think is something that we bring to a lot of our clients, as well as our ongoing sort of relationship with them as well. Anything to add to that one, Aisling, as we come to the end of the model?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay. And then how might that mindset look? There you're looking for evidence that people feel empowered, that they've had the opportunity to call out ways that they can that they see that change can be improved, perhaps, and also a sense within the organisation that as an organisation they're better prepared for future change as well. As I said, some of the legacy of managing change successfully is learning those lessons and applying those lessons in the future for future changes as well. So that's our mindset model. Just wanted to share one slide really on communications. That's very much my sort of background as well. But really, sort of communication is such a vital part, I think, of managing change. Again, just referring back to my point just now around people not feeling empowered and not feeling the loop or not feeling able to feed into it. Then communication really can help to address that throughout the project. And I think structuring your communication and thinking about how you communicate, aligning it to the mindset model as well, is a really good way of sort of changing that communication approach over time as well. There's a lot of models and change philosophy that also kind of feed into that. You may have heard of ADKAR in the past, for example, which takes people through understanding the change and wanting to be part of that change, through to the clarity and the confidence that we've talked about in the model, and then that sort of consistency as well. So you can see in the examples here that very much on the left hand side, when we're building commitment, then we really want to establish that vision and that message for change as well, helping people to understand why this is happening, why the change, why is it happening now, and that's really wrapped up in that vision and case for change. And then once you get the sort of consensus and taking people through that stage, then it's what's in it for me, and identifying some of the key benefits and key impacts and the key highlights of the change will help with that as well. How you articulate those, how you communicate those with people, is a really key and important task, and way that sort of communication can support you as well. And then once you get the clarity, then we're looking to really build with people the thing and understanding of what they will need to do differently as well. So as I said, the change impact assessment is a really key part of that, but actually how you translate that into digestible and accessible and high level pictures, I guess, and sort of user stories of how it's going to affect you, I think is key. So again, a really key contribution that communication can make. Then when we get to confidence, again, you're building that confidence that people will get the support that they want, that there's training going to be delivered and supporting actually that training dialogue as well, so people turn up to training and turn up to any sort of activity that's focused on building those skills, with some context and some real understanding of why they're attending that training and what it's going to enable them to do in the future. And then when we get to consistency, really that ongoing sort of drumbeat, celebrating some of the successes, giving people access to maybe a knowledge library of all the training and all the support that you've delivered, and encouraging that sort of ongoing sort of change mindset and readiness for change as well. So a lot of things that communication and ongoing communication and regular communication can really contribute and support in a change as well, so that people feel that they're being kept in the loop, that their input is encouraged throughout, I think is vital. And the very last slide from us, I guess, was just around some of the sort of essential skills and services for change. I think there's a variety of different skills, and this is a sort of reflection of some of the skills and services that we provide to customers on their change journey as well. So a lot of sort of specialisms within there in terms of benefits management, how we measure and monitor change, communications and engagement, learning and development, a range of skills that help organizations to deliver change, but also to prepare themselves for change as well, and also their ability to transform as well. So a variety of different skills needed there to successfully deliver change. Aisling, that's come to the end of our deck. Anything you wanted to add to round up?
Just that we intentionally left some time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just see this as time with us. We're happy to answer questions around change. We've both designed and managed lots and lots of change programs in the public sector. So if you have any questions now, we've got time for that. If not, do reach out to us at any point, either of us. You can find us on LinkedIn. But yeah, we're more than happy to stay and answer questions.
Can I come in?
Hi, Nadira.
Hi. Really helpful. So my kind of follow-up point is, you talk about confidence in terms of organisations, you know, in terms of one of the kind of mindsets that you've described. With the clients that you're working with, what's your experience of how readily they then develop that kind of confidence in terms of their culture to adopt to change more readily? Does that make sense?
It does.
That's the trick, isn't it?
I think it makes sense. See what you think to my answer and see if I've answered it correctly. So and I love this aspect of change programs. So what I've done in the past is deliver some change management training to that change network, or to a network of leaders or leadership at every level, but delivering things like the William Bridges transition model that I talked about, so that people understand the theory behind change and the process and why they may be feeling as they're feeling. And when you start hearing the language and the tools being played back and spoken about internally, you sometimes get this little bit of a shift of a light bulb moment where people are then equipped to talk about change, to lead others through change, and to grow that confidence of actually, we don't need to be scared of change. It's a process that we can understand and engage with.
Absolutely, and it's getting to that point of maturity, isn't it, for the organisation?
Yeah.
Of course, it has to be treated as a process and almost a kind of tick box exercise. But when an organisation is more responsive, ready, and the process is embedded, it happens as a matter of course. That's really exciting.
Exactly, and and if you can do that work effectively, you have a more resilient workforce, a more adaptable organisation. So it's not just the change programme that you're looking at that moment, but it's increasing capabilities for the future as well.
Exactly.
And you mentioned Aisling, around sort of leadership and leadership development, but having a vocal leadership, not just kind of, you know, senior sort of, you know, executive board sort of members reinforcing it, but even down to sort of, you know, people's line managers and the whole sort of management structure, having an understanding of that and reinforcing that, I think, is key. So developing some of that leadership mentality for change, I think, helps to sort of embed it. So it's not just a program team talking about how great this change is and all the sort of positive messages, but it's coming from within the organisation as well. I think that cascading on the champion network and on all the other things that you can put in place, I think it really needs to come from within the organisation as well. And developing that kind of mindset, I think, is really important.
We've got a request in the chat to put the previous slide up if possible.
Yep.
And you've also got your hand up. Was it to ask that, or was it a different question?
It was a different question, sorry. So it helps if I put my mic back on. How would you approach something that basically hasn't gone through all of those stages and is very, very major in its impact? And we're seeing, I think, some real issues from not having gone through those stages. It's something that there's myself and a colleague on the call today, and we're both involved in it, but we've been affected by it rather than actually doing it ourselves. Where would you start if almost nothing of the things that you've just been talking about had been done first or in the change process?
Yeah, and I would say it's actually never too late to start the mindset model.
Yeah.
So even if you're partway through change and you haven't taken that approach, commitment is always where you need to start, even though that might seem unusual that you're already through a change. You can't change your mind, you're partway through, but you still need to secure that commitment. So it's the same process. And actually, we've got quite a lot of experience of that, because sometimes our clients ask us to come in when they're partway through a change program and they've realized they need some help, but actually it's already started. So we can come in and you know, it would depend on the program what we would do, but I would say it's never too late to start.
Yeah, I think at the moment we're sort of being told to just get on with it. Now it's all happened and we're all going, what's are we meant to be getting on with? We're not sure. So there's a lot of
and there is sometimes a tendency, I think, to without that sort of structured approach, and as Aisling said, starting with that sort of commitment and clarity and understanding the sort of rationale behind the change, and just trying to dive in and start to kind of build the skills and almost trying to start at maybe the confidence stage, which is more, you know, the implementation stage, I guess, but without that context and without that understanding, without that rationale of why the change is happening, why it's happening now, why we've got to do this, then it's very hard to sort of bring people to some of that sort of upskilling when they don't really understand why that's sort of necessary as well. So very much as Aisling said, that preparation stage, probably some of it before you even start engaging with some of the people who are directly impacted by the change, I think is so important, because it gives you all that evidence and vision and sort of rationale, and ideally you've built that sort of leadership mindset and culture as well to kind of reinforce that before you do it. But we do work on quite a lot of programs, don't we, Aisling, where that hasn't been the case, and we've had the sort of start of that kind of or even sort of revisit some of that vision work and play that back in a bit of a different way and a more structured way, I guess, with some of the organisations we work with.
Thank you very much.
Question in the chat. How do we deal with people who understand benefits and the need for change, but they're still reluctant to take the plunge? So I guess it's about securing that commitment for change, isn't it? So it's still back to commitment, I think. And I think that's the beauty of the mindset model. You can apply it at any stage of a change process and to any stage of a change program and at any stage of an individual transition. And I think securing commitment to take the plunge, that would depend on who you're talking about. Is it leaders that are reluctant to implement a change program? Is the change program happening, but your stakeholders are reluctant? So what you would do would really depend on. Shabna, I don't know if you want to kind of elaborate a little bit more on the question, and we might be able to think of some specific ideas that we might suggest. Okay, no worries. And if you think of, yeah, no problem, reach out outside the call. That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, understanding where those kind of hotspots are and where, you know, is that an overall organisation sort of wide reluctance, or is that within sort of individual teams or individual parts of the business? So, you know, ideally with your network of change agents, that then some of those issues can be identified and can be kind of addressed sort of one-to-one and with more focused engagement from your change team, your change experts, but, you know, also your sort of leadership too. So understanding, as Ashley said, understanding that reluctance, what scale that reluctance is, and you know, and supporting that, I think, is key. But yeah, really keen to understand your particular experience on that. We can chat about that. Happy to.
Another one in the chat. How do we, and I have come across this before, I'm sure you have, Steve, how do you deal with people who are outwardly supportive and positive, but they're undermining it behind the scenes? We've probably got a variety of approaches on that one. I would say one thing you can do, so Steve talked about a change network. We would always encourage a change network. I think it's in Kotter's theory that he has a coalition of the willing. So in a lot of change programs, you'll have people who are genuinely up for the change, excited by it. They're going to be your champions who are going to hopefully be infectious and encourage other people to be behind the change. You will always have resistors. So in terms of resistors, one way to deal with resistance can be to outnumber the resistance. So you create so much support for the change program that the resistance isn't very powerful. It depends on who the resistor is. So sometimes, you know, we would map stakeholders, and different stakeholders have different levels of power and influence. If those resistors have high power and influence, you may want to engage in one-to-ones and you know, have some more honest leadership conversations with them. Steve, you've probably got some ideas from work you've done.
I was just
typing.
I just popped something in the chat there for a different question, but yeah, I think I overuse usually the word momentum. I think with this as well, but I think it kind of aligns with your point as well about outnumbering resistors with positive. But I think building momentum for that as well, and celebrating, I guess, where you can, those early wins and those early successes, and building that momentum and that sort of groundswell of positivity to the change certainly helps with some of that. Understanding though, and not being blinkered to, I guess, where that's happening, and again, you know, your network being a bit of your eyes and ears on the ground, and understanding that and dealing with that, I think is important. But yeah, I think momentum and sort of, you know, building that sort of positive sentiment, I think is key.
Thank you, Leslie.
Communication, certainly communication, and as we said, sort of celebrating those wins and ensuring that the people are clear on kind of some of those benefits, I think is key, and not letting that sort of drop off too quickly as well.
Yeah, thank you. Leslie, over to you.
Thank you. It's a brilliant presentation, so thank you very much for this. I am the colleague of Angie, who asked the excellent question previously. I think you may have answered my question now. It was about where would you start with that commitment? Would it be, you know, doing that full communication and the benefits? Because I think that's possibly where we're lacking is fully understanding the benefits of the change. So would you always start with those benefits to get that commitment?
Really depends what the change program is, but for example, if we were doing supporting a technology implementation, to create commitment, we would run a series of workshops or undertake some discovery work. So understanding, what are your pain points? Why do you need to change? There's always a case for change, isn't there? So understanding what's holding you back. Why do you need to make this change? And that will create a really compelling case for change. So thinking, what doesn't work at the moment? Actually, Steve, would you mind going to the quote that you put on? Because I think that brings it to life quite nicely. You know, stuff isn't great, and it's that message. It's understanding what isn't great in your organisation. What's the driver for the change?
And also sometimes I think looking at how you can link it to some of the bigger organisational visions or future direction as well. So it might be that this is a technology change, but actually by doing this, it enables it supports some of those wider organisational changes that that have already been shared, you know, completely separate perhaps to this change, but are actually quite aligned to it. But when you think about it, I think it's good to think about ways that you can actually map it to maybe some wider values or wider change or wider organisational messages as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
No more hands up and no more questions in the chat. Last call. But otherwise, thank you all so much for attending. Great to have that interaction at the end as well. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Okay, bye everyone.
Thank you very much.